All right, here we are. Welcome back to another episode of Vengeance Radio, our second to last episode. That's pretty sad, but what's not sad is that we just had two really good semifinals games as we move into the finals week. I'm Human Bones, of course. I am joined by HateDaddy. How's it going?
What's up, everybody? How you doing? How you doing, Bones?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Excited to talk about the games last week and preview the finals.
It's Friday.
And it's Friday.
Let's
And it's
fucking
Friday.
go.
So, yeah, like I said, we had two really good semifinals games. A lot of different maps being played. Um, let's jump right into the first matchup, which was PK3 and GLF. This
Great
matchup,
series.
great series, a six-rounder, might be our first six-rounder in Vengeance. And six-rounders are rare, you know. I think there's maybe been like three in the entirety of the WDL, maybe like not much more than that, if that, in the entirety of the IDL. So pretty rare. And this game was back and forth. I'll go through the stats so we could talk about it. So PK3 they had 80 touches, 8.75 cap percentage. GLF had 122 touches, so 42 more touches, which is kind of crazy. But pretty even, like almost dead even on the cap percentage, 18.85 for them. Um, and then the caps were a little bit more spread out. So I should say they were spread out in terms of all of GLF pretty much getting equal caps here. Lang had 8, and Poto and Azrael had 7 each. So pretty good, you know, pretty good there. So PK3 they had 108, 801. I'm not dyslexic. Frags, and GLF had 966. So that's a pretty big gap. And the high fragger was Lang with 420.
I'm not so sure it is though. That's across 6 games. So
Hmm.
let's do some quick math. So
Oh, I'm not good with that. Quick
that's
math.
okay. Hold on. 966 minus 801 is divided by 6 equals. So, roughly 27 frags a game. But I think most of those differences, if I'm looking at the stats right, um, really came largely from map 43. Because if you look at the map, or yeah, if you look at 36, PK3 actually was even or outfragged them in both cases. So I think you're right. There is that big disparity, and it's about 27 and a half, so call it 28 frags a game difference. But I think the fact that GLF was just that much more dominant on their home field kind of inflates that. And it probably doesn't paint the appropriate picture for how close this series actually was, especially with the last 2 games kind of being blowouts. I
Right.
mean, even round 5, though it ended 5-0, I'm pretty sure um or not round 5, round 6 ended 5-1. So the final round, the clinching round for GLF. For the first 4 minutes, it just sat there at like 1-0.
Yeah.
And then GLF just exploded for like 4 straight flags. So I think something definitely happened in the last 2 rounds where GLF figured PK3 out. But there's no denying that the first 4 rounds, PK3 was right there with them and even stole home field advantage. But
Totally. And I mean that's the thing is like if you lose home field advantage, it can be I mean it can be devastating for you. And what PK3 actually did was so they tied the first map, which again, eliminates that home field advantage. GLF came back and won. But then PK3 went to their home field and they won twice.
yeah,
And so we were like, shit, what's going to happen when they go back to map 43? And GLF just had every answer for them. I mean, there was no that wasn't a really close round.
no.
That was pretty that was um, yeah. So going into round 6, obviously this was a do or die round, and they could have tied and went back to 43, but based on the way that PK3 played in rounds 3 and 4, you kind of thought that they would take it. I mean, round 4, I know was back and forth, and they barely squeaked by with a win there because I think they were up a couple flags, and then GLF came back, and then it was
They
like a
did.
back and forth thing,
Yeah.
back and forth thing. And then PK3 managed to get that fifth cap. But I mean, it almost seemed like, in a way, the tide started to turn there because GLF was able to kind of exert more pressure on PK3 in round 4. They made it a little bit closer, and then when you go into round 5, obviously that's a blowout. So it just seemed like the momentum started to shift near the end of round 4, even if PK3 came away with the win. So I don't know. Going back to round 6, I mean that's still a really good feat, for GLF to bounce back from like tying on their own home field, losing twice on PK3's home field, and then coming back around 6 and having to play a map that is not their home field and winning. And yeah, it was tied 1-1, but I mean once they blew it open, it was pretty easy for them to win. I
Yeah.
mean PK3 just it seemed like they didn't respond well to the way that GLF adjusted. Um, so I mean, in round 6, you go down a flag. I mean, the way the whole series was, like you go down a flag, that's not the end of the world. But I think PK3 might have played like it was, because they really just crumbled as soon as GLF got an advantage on them, and that was probably where they faltered the most was
Yeah.
round 6.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think when you watched the end of round 4, it was almost like GLF knew. It's like they figured them out.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure if because if you looked, like, Lang was doing well. I mean, Lang was good throughout the entire series, but it's almost as if they found this formula to kind of slow down just the ridiculous pace that GLF or PK3 was playing with. Even though GLF was getting flag touches and they were touching the flag more, it just felt like PK3's touches were more methodical and had a better chance of being successful. So they were higher quality touches. And at some point, I think GLF, while they were just kind of throwing bodies at the flag, they figured out how to pressure them the right way offensively to get flags across. Because, I mean, I watched, all of the rounds. GLF was constantly getting flags out to the middle. They were just dying in the middle.
yeah.
So
I
it's
mean, well,
kind,
look at the touch
yeah.
disparity.
So it's kind of like if you look at the stats, you would think that GLF kind of won going away, but that's just not the case.
Yeah,
And a lot of it has to do with the fact that PK3 just had quality touches. PK3 got the touches that they wanted when they wanted them, and they converted more. Whereas PK3 just kind of threw bodies at the flag, or GLF rather, just threw bodies at the flag.
yeah.
And it's kind of like two different schools of thoughts colliding here, because you have one school of thought that tends to think, no, you need to get quality touches, methodical, realistic touches where you and maybe even another person get into the base, kill the defender, overrun him, and come out. And then there's another school of thought that says, no, you just keep ridiculous pressure on the flag. More touches equals more pressure equals better defense because they have to respond to your flag touches constantly. And that takes their offensive out of the equation. And I don't think either one is necessarily more right than the other. I just think it comes down to whether or not you have the adequate team to pull one or the other off. And I think in both of these cases, GLF has that adequate team to pull off the just throw bodies at the flag, whereas PK3 is like the quintessential quality touch team. You have Dragon and Toby that tend to, even though they're both excellent mechanical players, they tend to be a little bit more methodical. And then you have Chain Dude, who is very methodical in everything that he does in CTF. So it was almost like this clash of styles. And I wonder if ultimately, because GLF maybe it's the ping difference, maybe it's just the synergy, maybe it's the maps, I'm not sure. But in the last two maps, and let's say last 2 maps and a half, they just figured it out. And it went from being this really closely contested, tight match to just not so much, minus a few minutes here and there.
Yeah, I mean the thing about PK3 on map 36 that I talked about a bunch is Chain's ability to extend those plays when he's got
Yeah,
the flag in standoffs. But I think actually the problem with PK3 is that they were always in standoffs. Like they could never keep the flag at their stand long enough, and that especially came true in round 6, where I mean they got like if we look at the touches in round 6, I should have pulled that up sooner. Um, if you look at the touches in round 6, I mean, they still got even amount of touches. Like they were a lot of touches too. There were 28 touches from GLF and
yeah,
18 from PK3. They were just not able at all to keep that flag on their stand. And so, I mean, eventually that's going to come back and bite you in the ass. I mean, like, yeah, it's great that you can extend these plays, but the goal is to, keep that flag there so you can score it. And I think whatever it is that GLF figured out, um, whether it was because I think that the way that they were playing really wasn't. PK3 liked to play from the middle where they were controlling that sphere. I'm not sure that they really played kind of that defensive spot like in the back. So they were kind of a little pushy.
yeah,
And I think GLF started to take advantage of that by, just making maybe in round 6 making a few more calculated touches and more even touches like across the team. So round 6, Lang had 9, Azrael had 9.
yeah,
So they started to try and mix things up, whereas in the previous rounds before that, it was primarily one player getting the most touches. So I think they definitely changed their strategy a little bit, and PK3 just didn't adjust.
yeah. And I'm pretty inclined to agree with that because I think any way you look at it, no matter like let's look at round 6.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually funny who ended up being the most dominant player in round 6. It was their runner, Poto.
Yeah,
He had 70 frags to 28 deaths.
that's crazy.
Yeah, but that tells you that's indicative of what their strategy was and where it turned it. I think at some point they realized let's just frag more as we're going in and make it easier for defense.
Yeah.
And if you watched the game from the server, and because sometimes you don't get such a great perspective and I didn't watch it from the server, but I watched some of the demos.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the flags that GLF gave up were just free touches. Like they just got Chain just got behind them.
Yep.
Because they were just so concerned with pressure. And sometimes that happens when that's the style that you run. But I think ultimately, if you look at the last few rounds, Poto became a much more efficient fragger. And that's where GLF's fortunes like really turned around. So I'm not sure that's necessarily indicative of anything, but well, and and to be clear, like he was a good fragger throughout, but it's just it seemed to me like if you look at his overall score, like touches and everything. So I don't. It's interesting how this is going to affect the matchup against EDR, and if maybe they think Poto just needs to be more aggressive with flag touches. Period. I'm not sure. I mean, he was getting the majority of the touches, but
Well, one thing I
yeah,
think it does is like because I feel like I've been involved in the most 6-round matches for like I think I can count like 4 playoff matches that have gone to 6 rounds for me.
mm-hmm.
I can't. I think I won most of them. I might have lost one, but so basically my point is, like you, especially when you win, you learn a lot more about your team than you did throughout the whole regular season or even another playoff game because I mean these are scenarios where it's like one bad move and you're out and
Yeah,
like to be able to bounce back from like okay I'll give myself as an example picking the old map 26
mm-hmm.
So that map is a notoriously, frag heavy, low scoring map. Now, both seasons that I picked it as my home field, there were a number of playoff games where we had the higher seed and we tied the other team. And it was like, well, there goes our home field advantage. If you can't bounce back from that, then that's it. You're going to
That's it.
lose.
Yeah, there's nothing else.
But if you can, then I mean that basically proves that you can pretty much do anything, and I
Yeah.
think that really boosts your confidence level. And in certain situations in games where you're in your head, you're like, okay, this really isn't working, but I'm afraid to do this. You don't really become afraid anymore, and you just do it, and it could work really well. So I think for me, I think that was a really good showing from GLF, just on like a like a mental level.
Yeah.
Obviously, we knew their ability was there, but really good win from GLF.
Yeah, and this will be a good segue into the next match. It's both teams,
Hmm.
and maybe in different styles, but both of the winning teams adjusted well enough to play on what we considered some sort of specialty map.
Yeah.
And look, that's why they were the two best teams in the league. They can win wherever. And even though GLF never won on PK3's map, I think they got enough confidence in playing close in it that they were able to defend theirs.
Yeah.
And well, they won the last round. But yeah.
Right. They won when it mattered.
Yeah,
But it took them
exactly.
5 rounds to get there.
But once they got to that point, it's like, again,
Yeah.
and I think, we'll go into EDR's game against TCO, which was significantly less interesting. But yeah, I'll let you go ahead and sum that one up.
Yeah. So obviously, GLF moves on to the finals, and they were the first team to qualify for the finals. The second game of the week was EDR and TCO. Like you mentioned, a little less up in the air. I mean, with the two maps that were being played, Map 20 and Map 8, I mean, these are two of the most popular maps played ever in Doom CTF, so we weren't really expecting anything crazy. But obviously, I know we hyped Dastin up a lot.
You got something crazy, though. I can't wait to talk about it.
Okay. Well, then I'll read the stats. I'll let you talk about it. Okay, so we started off on Map 20. Map 20 was EDR's home field. So EDR, they got 89 touches, 10.11 or 10.11 cap percentage. TCO had 58 touches, so 31 less touches with a 5.17 cap percentage. And again, another example of teams spreading the love. We had the Fat Willie with 4 caps, Sharp with 3, and Disparrow with 2. As far as frags go, pretty close. EDR had 670, TCO had 637, and Disparrow was the high fragger with 288. So why don't you go?
So what I thought was just what blew me away when I looked at the stats, because I watched all these games too, and the games were actually pretty tightly contested. I mean,
They were.
I think they, 3-0, 3-1, 2-2, 1-0. These, this is a 4-game series, but these were very close games, each one. Yep. EDR just won. And what you saw, what I think was just absurd, and it carried on in every round, was just how balanced EDR is. Mm-hmm. They get a lot of production out of all 3 of their players. And yeah, one round here or there, you might have the Sparrow lead the charge, or maybe Shane will lead the charge on another round, and it might not necessarily be in frags, but he'll fill up the whole scoreboard. So looking at round 2, for example, Disparrow had 83 frags to 61 deaths. Great KD, 1.36. But no flag touches, not a single touch, not a cap, nothing. Meanwhile, Sharp one, he has 1 cap. He's touched 13 times, 44 frags, but he died 71 times. So, 62% KD. Man, but look at Shane. Like, look at his score. Like, just fills up the stat sheets. 2 flags, 67 frags to 72 deaths, practically, an even KD. You know what I mean?
Defenses and returns.
Yeah, like you just it's any one of these guys at any point can just have a great game. And I think that's why I've been so high on EDR this entire season, because I think Lang, for example, in GLF's case, Lang and Poto are always going to have a great game, but we don't know about their third. Their
Right.
third situation has been up and down this entire season. And save for one game, they've been able to cover that up. But when it mattered the most in their week 2 confrontation, they got exploited. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not to skip the TCO and EDR summary here, but that worries me because both of these maps that they're playing are pretty much identical. And the map that they played in week 2 was much like the maps they're playing now. So when I saw what I saw from EDR, I just saw a really balanced team that's hard to score on, but equally as potent offensively. They just control them. And what it is it's like you have basically a runner and 2 mid players. You don't have a quintessential true defender, like a turret style defender. You have Desperal and Shane that kind of just bounce all over the place, but it works for them. And they've coordinated their attack really well. And you saw that in this game against TCO. And they were up Daston's ass the entire time, that map 8 game. They did not let him have a good game. And you could see, like, you watched Desperal often would like play from the mid and shoot him anytime he'd rocket jump and then meet him in the base. And I was actually wondering why that wasn't really done before when they played against Save Our Souls, because that's how you deal with a rocket jumping player like that a lot, is you meet him in mid. Even if you die in mid, you do so much damage to him that he's not going to have a really good chance of scoring with rocket jumps. Right. So, and EDR just controlled them. It was just ridiculous. But yeah, I thought, despite the fact that they were still very close games, it just felt like, okay, the games are close, but we know who the better team is, and we don't really feel like EDR is in any real danger of losing.
Yeah, I mean, definitely round 1, it was close for a little bit, and then EDR just kind of, in really short time, they got 2 caps.
Yeah.
And that was probably like 5 minutes into the round, maybe 6. And so at that point, TCO had to adjust. And what I think they did well was they put Daston on O instead of, right near the end. They put him on O instead of defending. And I think that was a better move for them. Because when you go into round 2, now you can tell the touches are completely the opposite. Daston had 1 touch in round 1. In round 2, he had 10 touches. And I recall one really long standoff that if it had gone TCO's way, maybe they would have taken round 2 or at least tied it.
But score was 3-1, so if they get it, it's suddenly a 2-2 game, right?
Right. But it didn't go their way. But I mean, I think that was one good example of them. Maybe if they had been able to make it to around 5, maybe things would have gotten a little bit more interesting. But like you said, when you get into map 8, like, meeting Daston in the middle and shooting him on the corners of the map, really smart. And then something else Desperal did that I thought was really cool was when he was defending up at the top near that switch for the plasma, Daston would run towards him, and like, instead of doing anything, Desperal would just sit still. Like, he would choose his moments to like just stop moving. And when you're a runner like Daston, and you're running fast and you're expecting someone to juke a certain way and they just stop, like, that can like fuck with you, know? And that was really, Desperal kept doing that, and it kept like, Daston was like, why the fuck aren't you moving? Do I shoot you? No. And then Desperal would kill him. So I thought they did a really good job of that. And to tie map 8, I mean, I can't recall who was up first and then who tied. I think EDR was up and then TCO managed to tie it. Which was concerning. And then in round 4, they just completely shut him down. Yeah. I mean, they didn't even score 1 flag. And I mean, when you have a team like EDR, they can stop. That's the one thing about them that's going to be concerning for GLF when we start talking about that, is if they don't want you to score, like truly don't want you to score, and they're okay getting 1 capture and that's it, they're fine. You're not going to score on them, and they're going to win 1-0, and they're going to make you, grind your wrists into dust trying to get flags. But So yeah.
I think that works in map 8 against Dastin, but I'm not sure that works against GLF. I think if you would have told EDR, hey, you guys are going to shut out Dastin, but in exchange, you're not going to score very much, they would have taken that deal.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if they shut out Dastin, chances are TCO just doesn't score on map 8. And even though Legion, I believe, did get a capture in round 3, I mean, the one cap that Dastin did get, it just felt like he struggled tooth and nail for it.
Right, and
And
Legions was a pickup capture anyway, so
yeah,
Dastin got it across.
yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those things where I'm only concerned for EDR and the fact that yes, they have displayed flexibility and being able to play in grindy, slow pace games or high pace, fast games. But at the same time, they have shown some tendency, as great as they have, as a great fraggers they have, that they could be out fragged by teams. And I think with map 20 and map 43, which are like basically the same maps.
Yeah, pretty much. Zen and
Your
I commented on that too.
yeah,
They're like the same thing.
that is concerning for EDR though. That is the one point where I think, you know what? I think if GLF could turn it into a frag fest and really just make things ugly and just continue to throw shit at the flag, I think that's their win condition. You know, throwing off EDR's balance. And we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I guess we can because it's, I mean, do you feel like there's anything else to say about TCO? And
No, I mean EDR shut down Dastin, and that's all they really needed to do. There wasn't any kind of secret to it, and so EDR, protects their number 1 seed, and they move into the finals with the higher seed and the home field advantage against GLF. And like you mentioned, we got map 20, Cold Sweats, and we have map 43, Slave Machinery. Essentially, they play very similar. There's teleports behind the flag. The middle's a wide open slugfest. One thing you can't do on Slave Machinery is rocket jumping, but yeah, I mean, the thing that I think concerns me about EDR, just because when you have the home field advantage, obviously you want to win 2 maps on your home field, but when you pick a map like map 20 that's so frag heavy and everyone's played it a million times, generally speaking, if you're going up against another well-organized team, like you would in the finals, you're not just going to go in there and score 5 flags. I mean,
no.
in a tight game, like, I like to use this as an example, mostly because I'm proud of the win. But I played a season with Ralph and Pero, and
Mm-hmm.
Pero's got like 300 ping. I mean, it is what it is. But we went up against Water, Torvald, and Yorick, who you might not have come across Yorick, but he was a
Mm-hmm.
really strong fragger, whatever. On paper, a team that is probably more well suited for map 20 than we are.
Right.
But we know the map so well that it was super close. And all you got to do is get 1 flag out, 1 or 2 flags out, and you're good. That's what we managed to do. I don't see why GLF couldn't do the same thing to EDR. As balanced as EDR is, they've picked a map that, let's face it, is not going to be anything new for anyone. So I could totally see GLF coming in and stealing around or tying around. Conversely, map 43 is just as frag heavy. So, I
Yeah.
mean, what do you do there? Because, I mean, both of these teams are going to just go at each other. I mean, I think we'll see a record amount of frags and deaths across these 2 maps. But, I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable if I was either team. And that's kind of what makes it exciting. More
Yeah.
exciting than, if it was TCO playing, like, my team on map 8. It's like, okay. No one on HTM is rocket jumping,
Right.
so I think TCO is going to win that one. But on these 2 maps, I couldn't tell you. I really have no idea who's going to win because they're six players that are all incredibly talented, frag heavy, machines, and it's like you're just gonna go up against it's gonna be a bloodbath. So anything can happen in games like that.
Yeah. I I'm inclined to still like EDR more just for the fact that I think overall their offense is maybe it's been a little bit more consistent this season. I think Poto's been phenomenal, but Poto's also been kind of mid. Poto's kind of plugged in even at times on D.
Yeah.
Whereas EDR has kind of been really consistent. Sharp's the runner, Shane tends to be their mid, and Sparrow is D. And they've shown an ability that they can play in pretty much any style, and slugfests and shootouts, it doesn't matter. But what I'm trying to determine, what I'm trying to conclude is whether or not week 2 was an anomaly or a sign of things to come. Because let's remember, EDR 5-2'd them twice. Like, not close games at all. And the map was really similar to what we're playing for both of these maps, and I mentioned this earlier. But Factorica was also a new kind of map that hasn't had a lot of gameplay. And it's possible that maybe there are some nuanced differences between that and 20 and 43 that we're not thinking about that are going to make all the world's difference. At this point, as dominant as EDR has been all season, and as well as they played against TCO, and despite the fact that I think GLF has been good, they looked vulnerable against PK3. So I'm just not sure that I've seen enough to make me think that GLF is any real threat to beat EDR. Look, to be clear, I think if there's any team in the league that could do it, it's GLF. But it's just, I don't know. Even though I've kind of mentioned some of the weaknesses that EDR has, that might not really be a weakness, and more just the fact that they're balanced and willing to play however they need to play to win, with regards to them being a little weaker on the fragging end at times. So for this matchup in particular, I don't feel good for GLF. It's the finals. You have to consider that. Nerves play a big factor in this. And some players just on that stage just don't play well. And maybe that'll happen. But for me, I look at this and I just can't help but feel like, I don't know, EDR is going to probably kind of beat GLF the same way they beat TCO. Like, yeah, the games will be close, but it'll kind of just feel like, yeah, but EDR is in control and they're not in any real danger of losing. So I'm kind of curious what you think about that.
Well, there's a couple things that I'd be worried about. I mean, for me, like I've only won twice, right? I've made it to the finals a couple times. One time that I won, we actually went undefeated all season, and I mean there was adversity, but we were pretty, comfortable in ourselves by the time we got to the finals. So there's a school of thought where some teams that are just, they have the best draft, they play the best through the regular season, they get to the finals and they win. And, sometimes they're just the best team all season. No questions asked. The other time that I won, we started off 0-2, and then we won 3 games, and then we had some crazy playoff games. And so you could look at it from the adversity factor, where, GLF has had a lot of adversity. They've fucked around with their lineups a lot. They've had, a bad loss against the team they're playing. They haven't always performed at a 100% level. So you can factor that in, is that this team has fought tooth and nail to get to the finals. Here they are. Are they going to come out swinging? And EDR is going to be, like a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
So you can look at it from both perspectives. The thing that if we were looking at two maps that first of all, if we were looking at a map that wasn't map 20, then I would say EDR's probably got it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry, but map 20 is
A generic
everyone,
pick.
a generic map. Everybody knows that map. To pick a map that has been played thousands of times, there's not literally nothing new that someone can do to you on that map. You just play your thing. Sometimes they kill you, they get out with the flag. That's it. I mean, there's nothing new that you can learn on that map. So it's a really, really risky pick when you get this far as you can get into the playoffs. And then 43, I mean, yeah, it's got a little less play, but there's also a little bit less to the map itself. So, like, it's just a straightforward map. So I don't know. I would be worried if I was EDR because if you find yourself in a situation where you're playing against a well-rounded, not well-rounded, if you're a well-experienced team like GLF, and they take a round or even 2 rounds off of you on 20, which I can totally see happening, that could spell the end of your season, really,
Yeah.
because yeah, and it would be only because you chose a map that everyone's just as good as you are on it. So I don't know. That's kind of concerning to me. I mean, I do think at the end of the day, EDR is the more balanced team, and they're gonna figure it out and they're gonna win. But again, it really just depends on that round 1 and 2. If GLF can come out and steal a round, or even steal 2 rounds, then I pick GLF. And it's easy to say like, well, if this happens, then I pick this team. But
Yeah.
right, I'm saying there are only very specific scenarios. If GLF goes down 2-0, they're done. But if they steal a round, I think they win. I'm still gonna go EDR though in 4.
Yeah. So I think my only argument, and I don't disagree with your point about
Mhm,
map 20.
mhm,
I think for the first round or two, and this is really just the first round because they got the bye.
mhm.
I think map 20 made sense, regardless of who they may have ended up playing. And I think you would be right, but the problem is GLF picked a map that basically plays the same way. There's no real difference in gameplay. So
Right.
it's kind of like both of these teams picked these really generic maps that, I'm not ignoring that there's depth to them. There's some, but it's just that frag maps tend to all kind of play the same. So it's just a matter of learning the nuances of the map.
Mhm.
And so I don't know that that's really a disadvantage at this point. And let me be clear, I wouldn't be surprised if GLF found a way to win. I'm with you. I think that, playing on teams that have kind of just been through some shit. I mean, yeah, you get into these slugfests, these really just, street fights, these fucking dog fights. And you're made for that. You're ready. You're prepared
Yeah.
for that. And you can make an argument that maybe EDR isn't. You can make that argument. How much it matters or how significant it is, I never know. Truthfully, it's one of those things that it's like it's always like a hindsight thing
Mhm.
where people will just look back and say, "Yeah, of course. How couldn't you see that?" But at the time, we don't know. We
Right.
have no way of knowing. So I'm with you. I think I like EDR in 4 as well. I think what will end up happening is, yeah, EDR will hold home field. Maybe GLF wins round 3. Maybe they tie it. I'm not sure. But then EDR just comes back in round 4 and wins, and that's all she wrote. And that's kind of and like I said, I just expect it to kind of be exactly how TCO and EDR went. Like,
Mhm.
EDR will beat them, and it'll be maybe a little closer, but they won't be these just monster blowouts. They'll be close games, but you'll just feel like, yeah, EDR's in control. Like they're not in any real danger. I just I can't get week 2 out of my head, and that's why I'm stuck on this, because like I said earlier, and I'll continue to say, what has GLF really changed since then? Like nothing. They really haven't changed anything. And I don't make and the thing is I don't know that they're necessarily playing better. I mean, they lost a round to us in week 4, and it was back and forth, but we stomped them one round. They stomped us. We stomped them. Week 5, they were fine, pretty dominant. But then the playoffs came, and I think PK3 is a great team, but like, let's be real, like they probably should have lost that series. If this weren't the Swiss system, they would have lost the series. Mm-hmm. If it would have just been based on games and not points, they would have lost the series.
Yeah.
It would have been done at 2-0-1.
Yep.
And, so for those reasons, that's why I like EDR. Again, I just have to say, would not be surprised at all if GLF won, because I think they've got the players to do it. But I'm also the type of person that's like, dude, you got to show me. Like, show me the money. Like, I haven't seen it yet. You've beaten us, you've beaten everybody else, but you haven't beaten them.
We didn't play. HTM did not play EDR. You haven't beaten me.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about GLF, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, they beat our ass.
Yeah, they've beaten everybody else. They just haven't beaten EDR. And sorry, like, you want to climb the mountain, now you got to beat them.
Yeah, but I mean, Disparel has gotten to this point a few times and is still looking for that win. So, as somebody that it took me 8 years to win a finals. I lost 3 finals before I won one. Yeah, that can be a weight on your shoulders.
Yeah,
after a while.
It can.
So, he's got to step it up too.
So it took me about 2.5, and I remember I was a captain, and the first time I got there because I got traded to like a super team, and we lost to another super team in the finals, in the Master Bowl. And the very next season, I got on a playoff team. I was a captain, and we got to the playoffs, and we had a really close playoff loss to the number 1 seed. And that season, and then I had a losing season the next, but like, it was 2 seasons and it was about a year and a half's time. But I just remember, like, this isn't going to go away. Like, that thing was that just always kind of like existed over your head. Like, you haven't won yet. You haven't done it yet.
Well, right. And, especially me.
And I definitely just felt, no, well, like I'm saying, like at times I absolutely would like try to overcompensate for that. Like, I got to do this. I have to be the best player. That's the only way I win. And I didn't at times think about like what would give me the best team and the best players. And I thought about, how can I win? Like, I definitely think that mentality can play a factor. I'm not sure how big of a factor it will be. But when I did win, I also was really similar to Disparel's situation. Like, our team was just so much better than everybody. Like, we just fucking rolled through the league. It wasn't ever close. Like, we played like 3 close games. Outside of that, we never lost a round. We played 3 close games, and we just blew everybody else out of the server. And that's kind of been how EDR is. And, the difference is like our finals was really the semifinals because the 2 best teams were in the same conference that season. Whereas
good old conferences.
Yeah. Whereas like here, it's seeding. So
yeah.
The 2 best teams should theoretically be meeting in the finals. And yeah, I don't know. I don't anticipate it'll make a difference. I anticipate EDR will win. And I think it'd be cool to see Disparel win and get that monkey off of his back, because it is something, especially as a competitive player. Like, that's something that bothers you. We play, we don't get paid to do this, but this is a hobby.
Oh, no, some of us paid to do it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But it's a hobby, right? And it's something we take seriously. And there's nothing wrong with that so long as you have balance in your life in other areas. But yeah, it's
still waiting on that one.
Well, but I'm just saying, like, it matters. It definitely matters. And it's a look, a lot of these guys, and us included, maybe not some of the older players like us as much anymore, but definitely in our heyday, like, we put a lot of time into this.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, like, a big reason why I do it is to win.
that was a running joke for a long time, which was, I was 0-3 and I could never win. I mean, everyone used to bring that up. It was the same thing with Mantis. I mean, it doesn't really
Yeah,
matter at
fuck
the end of
that
the
guy.
day. Well, the thing that used to piss me off was that in my mind, I was like, well, these fucking players that aren't as good as me, you know, they won, and now I'm
Lucked their
sitting
way
here.
onto a
Yeah,
championship
yeah,
team.
yeah.
Yeah,
But that's just the competitive asshole part of me. It took me a while to also understand, like a lot like what Disparel did this season, was really you can't like. I feel like things were a little bit different where you would draft somebody and you're like, I need a runner this season.
yeah.
I'm
I
drafting
fell
Genova and
into
he's
that
gonna
trap a lot.
run every
Yep.
single time. And then I drafted Rude and Torvald, like almost. I'm not sure why I even did that, and it was kind of lucky, but it changed my thinking of like, okay, I just need to draft a team that if I look at the schedule and I suck at defending on this map, then I need you to do it, and we
Yeah.
need to switch it. You got to have that flexibility, and I think EDR's got it.
Yeah.
So it's GLF's game to prove everyone wrong.
Yeah. But that does
Really.
put the pressure on EDR. I mean, to be
Yeah.
clear, and that matters.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. I mean, that's the thing that sometimes you just like, of course, it's like we'd love to build a balanced team where perfect runner, perfect O, perfect D, but sometimes just pick the best players.
Yes.
Like that, don't overthink it, especially if you yourself are a player that's really versatile and can kind of do everything. Just fill the hole that needs to be filled. That's
Yep.
what I did. I look, everybody thinks of me as a fragger, as a defender, as a mid guy. I won my championship as a runner. I was the runner on that team. Like the dedicated O. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I think Disparel, it worked out to just have a stupidly balanced team. And I guess my team and your teams ended up balanced too. But yeah, I guess if we're going to also use this as a little advice session to future captains, like, dude, don't overthink drafting. Don't overthink drafting. Sometimes just pick the if what you think you need isn't there, then just pick the best player.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll figure the rest out. Just pick the best player available.
Yeah, that's what you got to do because you can't
draft
based on positions. You just, like you said, you got to draft the best player.
It rarely works. It rarely works.
Because name me one player that is a good defender on every single map, no errors, nothing. I don't think there is one. Same with runners. I mean, I really don't think that there's anyone that can run every single map just at the same level. So you need to have that flexibility. And then, I mean, if you have the same players in the same positions too, other teams are going to learn that and they're going to exploit that. So you need that element of surprise too. And I think just to sum that all up, that's definitely what EDR has had this whole season. So yeah, that's about it. We got our finals tomorrow. That is, let's see, can I do math? That's in 14 hours. 14 short hours. That'll be streamed live, of course, by Zanero. We did it. We got through. A European league. We got through it. Good job.
Yeah, it was awesome too. I think it's worked out really well.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, a lot more people played than I thought would. People are kind of weird about having to play on different continent locations, server locations.
I blame Dragon. He pretty much forced me to do it.
Yeah, I pretty much blame Dragon for everything. I don't really run this league at all. It's a Dragon. Go talk to Dragon. That's what I do.
I think it's time to get Dragon out of the MDF. Guys, turned out to be a real problem, that Dragon. I'm just playing. It's a great season, and I'm really excited to see the finals tomorrow. I will not be in a position to watch them, but I'll watch them after the fact.
Yes, and as I mentioned in my announcement that I spammed to about 1,000 people, if you're not able to watch it tomorrow, it'll be uploaded to our YouTube channel under the season 3 playlist. So.
Yep.
So yeah, one more episode left. We will do some awards and award an MVP and all that stuff. That was loud. Yeah, so we'll get back to you guys on when we're going to do that. But finals tomorrow, 14 hours from now, 7 p.m. Central. What is that? Central European Standard Time or Central Eastern Europe. Somewhere in Europe.
It's 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for the United States.
10 a.m. for me. Twitch.tv/Denaro. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya, friends.